this bend.
Okay.
I think we've already covered why they hate this story for all the thrill seekers, because as we said, there's the vandalism and the damage, and no wonder they're peeved about everybody coming there. But in the reports that come out and the quotes from townspeople, they do some things that don't always help their case. They say they don't know where the story comes from. They say it's made up and it's not believable, which again makes sense. But here's the thing that they've done that can raise some suspicions. This happened in 1999 on Halloween. Reporters from a local newspaper, and there was also reporters and a crew from a television station, went to the graveyard, and they joined a bunch of onlookers who were hanging out, waiting.
Throwing bottles against the church?
No, they were outside of the grounds. They couldn't get into the grounds because it's gated off now. And the sheriff's deputies were there, as evidently they are every year, but they didn't ask anybody to leave the premises or the area outside of the cemetery until 11:30 at night. And they, according to the story, they did this because a representative of the cemetery owners showed up and ordered that everyone was to leave. Now, if you want to put the whole thing to bed and you want to say, listen, this is made up, stop coming here and stop doing this, then let the media in. Just let the news guys in and say, hey guys, we'll escort you with the police. You can hang out at this spot, stay here till 12:30, and lo and behold, nothing happened.
Yeah, no Satan.
No nothing.
Well, but
instead, they shoot them all away as if they were sweeping it under the rug and hiding it all.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good strategy to put it all to bed. It's just to have the crews there. Although, some true believers would probably say something on the order of like, well, gee, Satan didn't show up because he's camera shy, and there's all these TV news crews there.
I mean, yeah.
But at the same time, this doesn't mean there's any sort of conspiracy afoot, because there's hundreds of people there probably making a good old racket. The owner, you don't know where the owner lives, but he probably lives right next door or right across the street. And he wanted to go to bed, and so he just basically sent somebody over there. Or there's a third theory, which is that the representative of the owner, it wasn't the owner himself, was actually Satan.
No, I mean, I think that, to build on Joe's more rational theories, I mean, it's not like you, as a property owner, walk up to the police and say, I want everyone but the media to go home. I want to put this to bed. Let's let the media in. You escort them, and they'll prove that there's nothing going on here. No, you say, there's a bunch of people here. They're going to ruin my property. Send them home. And then they go home. You don't say oh, there's one film crew there that might be reputable. It's one person with a video camera out of who knows? It could have been thousands of people with video cameras.
But we've all been to places where you see the TV news van, and it's emblazoned on the side with the name of the station, and it's got the little radio dish, and it was a TV crew. They had their gear. They showed up with cameras in the whole 9 yards. The newspaper reporters, but I've got to presume that if the guy showed up as a TV reporter, he's got the news van and he's got all the news crud with him, because he's gonna try and report it and send it over to the station to make the splash of, look what's going on in Stull tonight. So that to me is it stands out like a sore thumb from a bunch of yahoos in their pickup trucks drinking beer to a bunch of guys with cameras and somebody standing there with a microphone in front of the spotlight talking. That person is very obvious.
Is it on YouTube or anything?
No.
I mean, so it's hard to know. In 1999, that it was kind of that trend of undercover reporting. Was it undercover reporting?
There's no reason to do that.
Or were they trying to emblazon? Were they trying to sneak in? Was it?
What I got was that it wasn't undercover reporting.
I mean, it's for me, it's hard to tell. And I agree with you. There's no reason to send them away. But also, truly, if somebody who owns the property lives right there, and they're I'm trying to go to sleep, they say, hey, cops, on the phone, tell everybody to go home, they don't know who's there. They just say, it's loud out there.
See, I got the impression, the way I read it, that the person showed up.
That a representative of the people showed up.
That is the impression.
And there's a problem with the representative may not have cared who was there.
If it's a secretary, she's like, it's midnight, crap, like I got called out of bed by these rich people to go tell everybody to go home. I'm going to tell everybody to go home.
That's a very good point.
But remember something else too is that they can boot them off the property because it's private property, but right next to it is a road, which is public property, and so if people really wanted to stay there and watch what's the goings on and see if Satan appears, you can still do it.
Yeah.
Well,
so I don't know why nobody did.
You went on Google. Did you go to the cemetery on Google Maps and look at the street view? The building itself is offset from the road. It's not like it's right next to the road. Yeah, the church.
It's sort of up the hill a little.
It is up the hill.
Now that it's fallen down, it's kind of out of sight.
Yeah, you can kind of see it from some of the satellite photos. Its footprint, but it's not right there. It's a ways away. So I mean, I'm just gonna make up a number. Let's say it was 80 yards away. That's a fair bit away to be able to see anything at night with a video camera.
Yeah, but if Satan's like appearing on Earth, he's probably like, there's a light show.
And he probably
What, it's a discotheque now?
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, there's some fire and brimstone happening.
It's gotta be. Well, but the thing about it is Satan is there, depending on why he's there. If he's there to visit his deformed child that's buried there, then he's gonna walk him on the tombstone. So you take a little night vision gear, maybe with a little magnifying capability, and you'll spot Satan if he's there.
Be a hot spot.
We're just sending Joe on location.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep going here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay. So the next theory is, you're not going to believe this. It's a total hoax.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
shocking.
The origin of this story.
And that's where we're at. Tell us. Joe's gone a little ahead of us, which is the big red flag is when the story showed up. Back in the 1950s, supposedly, there was a professor at the University of Kansas who made the story up about the gateway to hell being located in Stull. He made this urban legend up.
Yeah.
Now, and evidently he told it to his students continually until it caught fire. But I don't know why someone would intentionally make a story like that up.
You don't know why? People do it all the time.
Unless he really had it in for someone in that town or just the town itself. Like, he must have hated somebody.
Or he saw the town name Stull and thought, hey, that's kind of like Skull. I'm going to make up a creepy ghost story about it.
Alternately, I mean, he just picked a small place that he didn't think any of his students would be from.
The University of Kansas, that's not, I can't imagine it's too far away. I actually don't know how far away it is from Stull now that I think about it.
Or that it would be a place that enough people kind of knew about, that it was a real place, but not like a lot of people knew people from there. I mean, I don't know.
Regardless.
Actually, it would be interesting. I mean, if this happened in the 50s, it would be interesting to look at the population tables and see what the tiniest town in Kansas is, and it might very well be Stull.
It might have been.
And going with her theory, that he just picked the very smallest town in Kansas he could find as the center.
And every Halloween just threw this story out there.
Because she was she wanted to because statistically speaking, it's less likely he's going to have a student from this town because it's the tiniest town in Kansas.
And it's maybe it's a farm community, so like they don't send a whole lot of people to college.
Yeah. In the 50s, yeah.
I think it's a fair thing to say.
Well, regardless of what could have been the reason that happened from this professor, the story is supposedly was repeated every year to his students, and nothing really happened until either 1972 or 1974. I'm not sure which year. I tried to get into the archives to figure it out, but I couldn't get the old archives from the university to come up. But the university newspaper reported this story. And I kept digging and trying to, and evidently their back issues are just not there. I couldn't get it. Maybe if I pretended I was a student and tried to log in, I might have found a way, but I couldn't get it. But evidently the university newspaper reported it, and from that point, it started gaining traction. And The first report of people showing up en masse is 1978, when supposedly it's reported that 150 people, we gotta guess they were all college students, showed up to see what would happen. From there, it's grown to what we have now of 500 people every Halloween showing up and trying to get in there, and now we have the fence and police patrols and all of that garbage.
I mean, we talk about doing this sometimes.
Oh,
I'm like every once in a while, like I don't know, like we talk about, well, maybe like there's always a like outlying detail in a story that one of us will bring up, and we're like, man, that sounds like something somebody was just like, oh, it'd be funny if we could see if that could be
an internet article.
Yeah, an internet article.
And yeah, we have talked about it. It'd be fun to set up an alternate website and start posting this stuff and just tacking stuff on, like so many people do.
And I think it's
hilarious.
Not outrageous to think that like a philosophy or psychology professor, would use this as a teaching moment or as an experiment or whatever. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, it could be. It could be he wanted to start an urban legend.
Yeah,
and
it's possible.
Doesn't everybody?
And so it would be a great, and maybe he did it for that reason. Maybe he started this little urban legend, and then he would say, so the student class of a couple of years down the line or something like that, he says, okay, have you guys heard this story about the gateway to hell and all that? How many of you have heard this? Raise your hands, and all this stuff. Okay, you. Tell me about this story. What have you heard? And then they tell me, and say, what do you think? Well, let me tell you something. I made it all up. Me, myself, dude. It's just as a sort of psychological experiment.
But I would think that if that were the case, if that exact scenario were the case, then there would be recounts of people saying, oh yeah, I was in that guy's class, and he admitted to making it up. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing that I could find. And again, this is one of those stories, and I fully admit this, everybody, one of those stories that is really, really, really hard to find a lot of concrete information on. But I did not see anything that said that he admitted to making up. As it is, I couldn't even find the name of the professor who supposedly made it up. So to me, the professor making it up, it's just as likely as the other theories, because I don't have any grain of fact to hold it to.
This is why I love this group that we have right here, is that you have just said, like, to our entire listenership, a professor making a story up to mess with his students is just as likely as Satan being real and coming to the
And by the way,
they're both equally reasonable.
Based on what I have to go on, yeah.
All right.
I think I know the name of the professor. His name was Professor Satan.
Yeah, I thought he was one of the guys from Mad Magazine.
Yes, viruses.
Yeah, we had this. I remember that when back in the 50s, we had this professor who told us this story. He had this really strange way of talking. It was like, mortal men, I will tell this story now. And if you watch again,
nobody could understand him.
I wish everybody.
But only the goth kids passed the class.
I like that you're not going to mention the faces that Joe makes when he.
Oh no, I don't look at him when he makes those faces. I actually put my papers in front of him.
Me.
Yeah, when I do my demonic voice, I'm kind of scary all the way around.
You really are. Well, I mean, as kind of a final thought on this story before I open it up to the pair of you, my final thoughts are, I personally don't hold a lot of stock in the occult and those kind of stories. Mm-hmm. I mean, I admit fully there are things that I have heard and seen that I can't account for in any logical manner. In other words, I don't have an explanation for whether I've seen it myself or I've heard about or seen it on recordings, whatever the case may be. But, that doesn't say that it is or isn't true. So I don't know that this story's real. Mm-hmm. But I can't say that some part of it isn't real. And I think that's why I wanted to kind of have this as our kickoff for Halloween, because there's a lot of crap here. But there's also a lot of potentials that could have happened. So that's the really difficult part, and I know that's something we try to tackle is peeling those layers apart to find the real thing from the not so real things. Not so real. That was a great explanation, Steve. But that's where I stand on this. So I don't know that I buy this. But this is completely outside of the things that I would normally jump into.
Yeah,
I'm on unstable footing.
Yeah. Well, I think that number one, as I talked about this a little earlier, but hell is like heaven. It's not a place that you reach physically. It's a place where it's like in another dimension almost. And so the whole
it's a level of transcendence almost.
Yeah, and so I mean there is a gateway to hell, which is the entire planet, which is like I mean you can do things that will
the entire planet conversely is a gateway to heaven.
Exactly, but you can do things anywhere on the planet that will earn you entrance to hell, and and that's your gateway right there. But when you go to hell, your soul goes there, not your body. So you don't need a stairway or a gateway or anything else to get to hell.
No, I think the gateway is a physical manifestation for us to be able to recognize it.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any such thing. Yeah, it's a fun story. There's all kinds of people out there saying stories about you get down there, this thing's pulling you down, and if you go camp there, you hear moans and horrible noises and scary stuff, and your flashlights will stop working.
Oh yeah, you always got to break like 17 times the amount of batteries as you need because your batteries always die. Yeah, exactly. That's in the accounts.
Yeah, exactly. Which doesn't really make any sense because if your flashlight's going to crap out because Satan has messed with the batteries in your flashlight equally. So bringing backup batteries isn't going to do you any good.
Can I go down the poltergeist rabbit hole here briefly with you on that?
Sure.
And I can't believe I'm about to do this.
I can't either.
Yeah,
I know this is really weird because I'm the total skeptic on this stuff. But the things that I've seen is that let's equate any kind of presence, a metaphysical presence, whether it be Satan or a poltergeist or a ghost or whatever.
Or a demon.
People equate them to an electrical disturbance. Okay?
Yeah.
So, if I have two batteries making connection inside of a flashlight, that is making a circuit, which is an electrical circuit.
Yeah.
So when this electrical disturbance comes through, it screws up that connection and it drains that connection. But those batteries themselves, the ones that you haven't put in your flashlight that are just sitting in your bag, they're an unconnected circuit. So therefore they cannot be drained by that field. So they're still going to work.
Right.
Man, I feel like I just need to point out the fact that, like, you went there, and I was like, yeah, but it's more fun to mess with people if they, like, put their batteries in, and then you, like, short it out again.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
It's way more fun if they have to do that 17 times than, like, shorting everything out at once.
Yeah.
You kidding?
I know. Well, I don't know.
So you physics, me fun, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it depends. I mean, I suppose if this presence can suck energy out, it basically
from a completed circuit,
it wants electrical energy for whatever reason it wants.
Manifestation.
Or it generates it, and it's sort of like EMP. It overloads it.
Yeah.
Which would pop.
That's
pop
the
bulb. That would kill. That would.
Yeah.
That would fry the bulb in the flashlight.
Right.
Or fry the circuit. Yeah.
Yeah, it would fry the. Yeah, you can't really fry a flashlight because it's so simple.
Right.
Yeah, but it's like So it's either gonna drain it or whatever. Yeah, who the hell knows? I think it's possibly somebody made that up.
Devin?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of with you. Like, I hate to admit the fact that, like, it's just as possible that a college professor made this up as it is that Satan really is, like, using a physical stairway to literally walk upstairs in a physical being.
Clop, 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 clop.
Clop, 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 or whatever. Regardless of what I believe about, like, heaven or hell and what those things might be, I think it's fairly widely accepted that it's not a place that you physically go in your physical body. It's a place that your spirit goes.
Yeah.
Therefore, the people or things that rule those spaces would also not be like physical beings that like have physical bodies that they have to use a stairway to get someplace. But it also, I guess, doesn't explain. There's a lot of big question marks that aren't really well explained by, saying like, well, that it's not real. Yeah, so this is one of those weird, crazy doozies where I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of on the fence on this.
Yeah, no, it's like I don't know if Satan exists or not, and I'm open to the possibility of the existence of, say, demons and things like that. I mean, they may actually exist. Really, seriously. I mean, but I don't. The stairway, nah, I'm not buying it.
Okay, well, there be the end of that. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as always, this is the best and your favorite part of the show, where we give you all of our, as Joe says, pertinent information.
He's devil speaking again.
He is again.
No, that's not the devil.
Or he just had a piece of ice cream in his mouth and couldn't. His teeth were freezing.
Yeah.
Regardless, the show, this one, and all past shows are available on the website. The website is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. The links some of the links for the research will be on there. You can and are probably consistently downloading us through iTunes. If you're on iTunes, go ahead and take the time to subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment and rating. We always like that. We're on Stitcher, so if it's a Thursday and you realize you haven't downloaded it and you're jonesing to hear us, you can go ahead and just stream us on any mobile-ready device. We are on Facebook, so the group and the page are both there. Like us, friend us. We've actually had a couple of really good discussions going lately, which is always fun to get all of our listeners involved in. And, of course, you can email us at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. You've got a thought on this, you disagree on a point, or you've got something to add to it. We love to get that, and we have some great conversations over the email, so feel free to send us one over the emails.
I'm sorry. I just can't deal with that.
I know.
Okay.
All right. That having been said, ladies and germs, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So until next week when we have another spooky story, we will talk to you then.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That was weird. Thinking Sideways, the podcast. I am Devin, joined per usual by
Joe
and
Steve.
They can't even say the and.
No.
I gotta do it for them.
You gotta do everything for
I am
us.
helpless.
You are?
Yeah.
It's true.
Devin does everything around here.
It's true, I do everything. This week we're going to talk about a mystery, or maybe a lot of mysteries, or maybe just one mystery.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy!
Could be a couple of dozen mysteries here.
Could be a lot of things.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, Steve keeps trying to say a word.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, he thinks that's the right word.
It's conspiracy.
It's pronounced conspiracy.
Controversy.
Yeah, that one. That one's actually pretty accurate. And before we get too terribly far into this, or in it at all, it was a listener suggestion by Rob about 1 million years ago, or like a year, in February of 2015.
Year and a half. Well, if you're a bacteria, that is about 1 million years.
It is. It's true. Yeah. Or if you live on Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, no, opposite.
No, if you live on Pluto, it's about half a day.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so thanks, Rob. Okay, so let's do a quick overview of this case real quick.
Okay.
Quick. Between 1982 and 1988, or maybe 1990, depending on how you look at it, 25 or 26, depending, scientists/humans who were employed by GEC, Marconi, or its affiliates, or closely related to GEC Marconi.
Which, by the way, was a very large British defense contractor,
yes.
Correct?
They died.
Mm-hmm. And now, especially, they really, the big die-off was really the first 4 months of 1987.
Yeah, and now you may be saying, Devin, it's not weird for people to die. What's going on? This was a huge company. Well, listener, you're right. It's not weird for people to die. But these people were all involved in a lot of stuff, like, the development of the Stingray torpedo, or like Star Wars.
Oh, you mean the Lucasfilms thing?
Well, actually, it was named after the Lucasfilm thing. Literally, it was. But that's actually what the media dubbed a project that was going on with the Strategic Defense Initiative Organization in the United States, primarily.
Thank you,
our
Ronald
allies
Reagan.
were helping us. Yeah, Ronald Reagan. But the media called it Star Wars, so we're calling it Star Wars, damn it.
Ugh.
We'll talk more about Star Wars in a second. mostly the thing you should be paying attention to is the Stingray torpedo, but also Star Wars.
I thought it was the Jedi Knights.
No, shut up. You can't make jokes about that all the time.
I can too.
Okay. These 25/26 scientists/people all died in different ways. Well, most of them died in different ways. A lot of them actually died in the same way. Again, we'll get to that.
Some of the circumstances were a little hinky.
In some of them, not in all of them. It was a kind of tight timeline for all of these people to have died in these like kind of mysterious ways. Some of them are definitely suspects. Some of them are definitely not. But
it's a Cold War plot.
Well, it might be, right? I mean, that's the whole alleged conspiracy, is that actually these people were all in on some really highly classified information, and that's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that they all started to die off.
I can see how it raises eyebrows.
Yeah. So I think the way we're going to approach this case is it's going to be another Devin lists and talks for a long time case, because I like those right now, apparently. But we're going to talk about Star Wars and the Stingray torpedo, just like really basic overview, and then we're going to talk about the deaths, and then we'll talk about theories. Does that work for you guys?
Sweet!
All right, cool, sure.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Star Wars, the Strategic Defense Initiative Organization, I'm just going to call it the SDIO, and the Stingray torpedo.
Yeah, most people just call it SDI.
No, I like SDIO.
Oh.
It's more comprehensive that way.
Okay, SDIO.
SDIO.
Yeah, don't do that.
I'm just going to abbreviate everything.
Yeah. People hate it when we do that.
They do. So in the 1960s, the Royal Navy started to think that maybe they should start developing their own torpedoes.
Because they were buying them from the U.S.
They were. And not that there's anything wrong with the U.S. torpedoes, but the British thought they could maybe do better.
And they didn't want to be dependent upon somebody else for their armament.
Right. That's the way we should be saying that. Not we're better than them, but they thought they were better than us. Good point.
Yeah.
Weapon dependency is a very, very bad thing to do if you ever get into a large-scale armed conflict.
It really is. And you know what was happening around that time is the Cold War, or was about to happen. And,
it's already started.
And, that was kind of like a huge armament thing. So,
they just had ideas of their own too. I mean,
they did.
The U.S. Navy is a little hidebound sometimes in their thinking, and the Brits thought, they came up with the spearfish, which was just a what's the word I'm thinking of? Just a
clever.
No, not clever. It was
efficient.
It was just freaking fast.
Oh, okay.
It was just They just thought, hey, why should we buy Mark 48s from the U.S. Navy? Well, let's build something of our own that's better.
Yeah. Well, so the Stingray.
Is that what the MK stands? I'm sorry, Devin. Is that what the MK stands for? Is Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, I could never find that listed anywhere, so it always frustrated me when I was doing the research. I was like, why is it an MK something?
Yeah.
Stupid U.S. Navy and their abbreviations.
Yeah, so Joe may be able to continue to shed some light on some of this stuff. But the Stingray torpedo, or at least the very beginning concepts of it, were starting to be born in the 1960s. And obviously they needed some help developing said Stingray torpedo. So the Royal Navy turned to what was at that point called GEC Marconi, or just Marconi. It's gone through a lot of different iterations. We're just going to call it Marconi for the rest of this. For simplicity's sake? Because it's just easier, yeah.
I think they got gobbled up by somebody else. They're not even Marconi anymore, right?
True.
They were originally Marconi, and then they became GCE Marconi. GCE was a company that owned them, and they bought them out in the late 80s, and then they got bought out by somebody else. It's been this huge thing. So we're just going to call it Marconi.
Okay.
Cool?
Yeah,
Everybody cool?
That's the
Listeners,
easiest.
cool? Send me an email if you're not cool. Cool. It isn't... I personally don't think it's very important to know what makes this torpedo important for this story. I mean, people may be interested, in which case the internet's a thing, so look it up.
Oh, actually, it's I will say that it is very interesting in the way that it operates, and and it is the multi-purpose approach that they took. From shooting it out of a submarine to dropping it from a plane is pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely, no, I think it's. As much as an instrument of war can be cool, it's cool.
Torpedoes are cool.
Yeah, torpedoes are cool.
Yeah, this is kind of the equivalent of the Mark 46 U.S. It's like an air Marines. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a nifty little Nifty little thing.
Yeah.
And I especially like the whole idea about, and this has been tried on other things. The Russians supposedly are trying this on submarines, which is sort of paying out like lubricant on the nose from the nose of the torpedo to basically reduce drag, make it
cool.
more efficient and faster. Yeah, it's kind of and it's a cool idea. Although probably leaves a nasty sticky trail, but
who cares?
What are you gonna do? Yeah.
But the really important part to know as it pertains to this case is that most of the people who are involved in this case were involved in the development or implementation of the Stingray torpedo,
which was top secret.
Top
and
secret.
Relatively decent security clearance.
Pretty dang
I wouldn't
high.
say totally top secret,
No.
but high clearance.
Yeah, really high clearance. So they were either involved in that development or in the Star Wars project, which came a little later. Star Wars program was to develop a missile defense system to protect America from any kind of nuclear attack. Yes, this is the way dumbed down version. We don't need experts to explain to us this dumbed down version. We're going to just say this dumbed down version.
Basically, the idea was to shoot down incoming Soviet ballistic missiles.
From every angle.
Not even necessarily Soviet, just ballistic missiles in
Ballistic
general.
missiles from anybody, yeah.
So Star Wars was very controversial, and it was actually very ambitious. It included surface-to-air interception, orbital intervention, and this is true, an X-ray laser called Project Excalibur.
Actually, the X-ray laser is a cool idea.
It's really cool.
And I want one.
I do too.
I do, yeah.
We should start a Kickstarter to buy our own laser, X-ray laser.
And I've got to say, directed energy weapons have really come a long way.
They have.
Thanks to SDI, I think, more than anything else.
No,
and now
totally agree.
And now we're fielding. We're actually not fielding necessarily, but getting ready to field really high-powered lasers that actually can shoot down missiles.
Yeah. So this was early development of that. It was super top secret.
We're still talking
Star Wars.
Well, I was going to say, at this point, we're still the 80s, so we're still decades away from where we are today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So all of the projects that these 25 or 26 people, well, the 25 people, the 26th person is a little different, but the 25 people that we're going to talk about were all working very closely on these heavily classified projects.
And by closely, you don't mean together as a group, because they weren't rubbing elbows all the time.
No, most of them, some of them did work together, but most of them didn't actually ever interact. They just were working on the same project. And these projects were large.
Yeah.
Obviously. You don't develop an X-ray laser without, having a couple hundred people working
in one 5-man office. Yeah.
No, that's not a thing. Yeah. And I guess as a side note, I just want to say that sometimes when I was watching Fringe, I started to really doubt the whole, this reminds me of a project Belly and I worked on. Right? From Walter Bishop.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I
watch that show.
You should.
Great.
You should. But
don't watch the last 2 seasons though.
Don't.
Really?
The further I delved into the history of the Star Wars project, the more I was like, oh crap. They literally just pulled this from history. This is exactly what we were doing. Oh God. Wow.
Fun times.
Side note.
Some cool stuff.
So, like I said, while there's some connections to Star Wars and to the development of the Stingray torpedo, this episode is not about that, so let's get going.
It's about murder and suicide.
Let's talk about some death.
Yeah, lots and lots of it.
First, death. Gotta get a somber tone. We're talking about death now. Professor Keith Bowden. Professor Bowden was a computer programmer at Essex University. He was an expert on supercomputers and pretty well renowned for his work with computer-controlled aircraft, which is totally ubiquitous now, but in the 80s.
In 1982?
It was,
wow, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Totally different, yeah.
I mean, Pong was major at that time.
Yeah. On an evening in March of 1982, he died in a car accident after reportedly drinking at a social function. His friends and family say he wasn't drinking, but he lost control of his car and crashed it into a rail line that wasn't being used anymore. So there were no trains using it or anything like that.
So it crashed into a rail line as in he crashed into a set of train tracks?
Yeah.
He went down an embankment.
Yeah.
It was down an embankment
tracks.
and at the bottom was a set of train tracks.
Oh, okay.
The impact would have killed him.
So he died.
He died.
It did kill him.
Yeah, it did kill him, but it was apparently the impact, right? Because there was no, like I said, no trains or anything like that. And something I'm going to say a lot here, you're going to hear oh, he ran his car into this thing and it wasn't in use. How lucky. right?
You think he did it deliberately? Or
I don't know if he did it deliberately.
or somebody else did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Godley. Godley was the head of the Work Study Unit at the Royal College of Military Science, which you're going to hear a lot about the Royal College of Military Science. Not clear what projects he worked on, but I think he probably did work on a lot of the projects, which honestly might be more of an indication than not. Not knowing what projects he worked on might be more of an indication than like if they had said what
We don't really know what a lot of these guys were working on because it was secret.
It was really secret. And in fairness, Godley may or may not be dead. He just mysteriously disappeared in April of 1982. He is presumed dead. And the reason that people presume that he's dead is that his father died in 1987 and left him like a ton of money.
Well, not a ton quite, but you know.
The modern equivalent of over $100,000.
Oh,
probably like 130 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And he never claimed it. Yeah, in today's money.
Yeah.
And he never claimed it.
But it doesn't mean he's dead, though.
It doesn't.
He might be like Patrick McGowan in The Prisoner, and he's just being held in a little quaint village on a coast somewhere.
Held
on the coast
being
of Wells.
the operative word there.
Yeah.
It's reasonable to assume that he is not under his own personage. I mean, that he's not
He's not operating of his own free will.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he disappeared, huh?
He did.
Yeah.
Next up is Roger Hill. Hill was a radar designer and a drafter for Marconi, and he shot himself with a shotgun in March of 1985. Presumably on purpose. The coroner report says it was a suicide.
So I'm going to bring this up because we're only 3 in, but we're going to see this a number of times. Things that seem very easily defined from the outside as a suicide and we're going to see things that seem very simply as just plain old accidents or intentional loss of life are going to be wrapped in. So this is going to come up again and again. So I'm going to warn people because I know people are going to be like, oh, are you kidding me? How is that on the list?
Yeah.
This is how the list is. This list has been, I always use the phrase curated.
Yeah.
I feel like this list has been very tailored because I've found some alternate versions of it out there that have more info, but it always gets trimmed more and more as I read it.
I have found people that were not on the list who were scientists, and they were not on the official list.
Because they were outside of Marconi.
Yeah.
Well, there are some people on this list that were outside of Marconi as well. But we'll keep talking about this, and I agree that there are some that have, I mean, it's definitely curated. I think 25 is like a really nice number. Right?
It's a perfect list size.
It's a good number.
It's always
perfect clickbait.
The top 10, the top 12, the top 20, the top 25.
Yeah.
Like, this is the way those things always run.
So it's, sometimes you got to pad that out.
Yeah, evidently they did.
Next up is Jonathan Walsh. He was a communications expert who had worked on a number of classified projects for Marconi. On November 19th, 1985, Walsh fell out of his hotel room window in Abidjan, West Africa. That's not suspicious at all.
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, they don't have hotel room window railings in Africa.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to fall out of.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Walsh had actually expressed to some friends that he feared that his life was in danger prior to leaving for his trip for West Africa. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. This is when things start to kind of ramp up.
After Walsh,
which is pretty suspicious, but
yeah, I managed to get along for many years without falling out windows.
Right, yeah, and he was only 29, so like, come on. Next up is Vimal Dajibai. He was a computer software engineer with Marconi who ran most of the testing on the torpedo development project, so that would have included the Stingray torpedo, and then the iterations thereafter.
Right.
On August 5th, 1986, he told his wife that he would be working late and then drove about 100 miles to Bristol and then mysteriously fell 260 feet, which is 80 meters, from a suspension bridge.
And he had no connection to Bristol.
He didn't know. There was no reason for him to be there.
Except there was a nice high bridge to jump off of.
Except for there was a nice high bridge, but I don't know why you would drive 100 miles for a nice high bridge. I bet there are nice high bridges somewhere within that 100-mile radius.
Well,
That's Britain, not necessarily.
Yeah.
There's buildings to throw yourself off of,
Right.
and trains to throw yourself in front of.
Right.
There's
There's
all kinds
other
of
ways
Yeah.
to kill yourself. The police report initially included a mention of a needle-sized puncture on his left butt cheek. But then later they said, oh, actually that needle-sized puncture wound is actually that actually came from his fall.
Oh, of course. And I also heard that he, when they found his body, his pants were down around his ankles.
I've heard varying accounts of that. Yes,
Yeah.
depends
He did
on.
fall into a river
He did fall into a river. That's
from a
true.
very,
He
very
did.
high height.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he'd been looking forward to starting. He'd actually just been offered a job in the city of London. His friends confirmed, as did his wife, that he had no reason for committing suicide. Granted, we know from our couple years of doing this show that there's not always a reason for
And there's not always
suicide.
outward signs or
Right,
obvious signs
right.
to friends and family.
Now, one of the things I want to know is, did he jump during the day or at night?
I believe it was at night.
Okay, did anybody driving by notice some big Russian-looking guys maybe throwing him off the bridge?
I don't believe so. No. When he died, he was within a week of his last day at Marconi. So that's a little.
Yeah, he had this cool new
Wonky.
job in London. I mean, hey.
Yeah. Although, like I said, there's no reason. But when you start to couple it with a lot of other stuff, it's kind of like, well.
This is a domino story. This is that's what I always refer to these as. It's the first one's fine, the second one, third. By the sixth, seventh, and eighth, you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
there is something going on. And I know that's what everybody's.
Yeah.
That's how this story gets so much
Oh,
attention.
yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah, I think, probably a combination of actual accidents and natural causes mixed in with some murders.
Yeah.
Maybe. Possibly.
It's a perfect cover.
Yeah.
Next up is Arshad Sharif. Sharif was working on a system to allow detection of submarines by satellites. So that's cool technology.
Yeah,
That's
I think
important
it's,
technology.
Like synthetic aperture radar is one of the technologies they use to detect
Yeah.
waves on the surface of the ocean.
Yeah. In October of 1986, Sharif placed a rope around his neck, tied the other end of the rope to a tree, and then drove off in his Audi with the accelerator pedal jammed down, and effectively decapitated himself.
Yeah, gross.
He did.
The coroner did decide that this was a suicide. Because I don't know why.
But I think his brother actually went to retrieve the car. He said there was a metal rod on the floor of the car next to the gas pedal.
This was retrieved. Of course, the police take the car and say, "We're gonna check it out, figure it out." So I saw that too, and I was really suspicious of that because it means it would have been in a wrecking yard. And things, as I get in there, I've got a thing in my hand from working on another car, and I set it down, and I move this car, and then I leave it. Like, it's never described.
It's possible.
Is it a rod that was of the proper length? This is one of those things about the stories. It's just, there was a metal rod on the floorboard, but we don't actually get any description to say if it could or could not have been used in a nefarious way to, as is inferred, hold down the gas pedal.
Well, the thing about it is too is you would have thought that if there'd actually been a rod there, that the police would have actually taken it into evidence.
Well, according to all of the folks that really believe that this is a giant conspiracy, this is 26 examples of police ineptitude.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that happens occasionally.
Or willful cover-up.
That too.
Yeah. Or maybe a little of both.
Yeah.
So
Silly bobbies.
I guess the couple things that add to Sharif's story, Sharif didn't really live anywhere near Bristol, which is where he committed suicide. And he'd actually spent the last night of his life renting in what they call a rooming house, which I think is just like a hostel. There's no good reason for this. He had a nice apartment and nice life.
It's funny they went to Bristol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had apparently paid for that room in cash, and apparently was seen to have had a bundle of high denomination notes, right? Banknotes.
Yeah, bills.
Bills.
Yeah.
Whichever, whatever. Apparently the police were told about this money.
The wad of cash.
The wad of cash, basically, yeah. And they didn't make any mention of it when there was an inquest into the death. and it's basically just been scrubbed out of the record.
I imagine the guys who drove the ambulance that picked his body up at the scene probably
Took it.
Found a new home for it.
Yeah, if it was on him, yeah, that's true.
This is a messy scene tax. Is
Yeah.
that what that is?
Yeah.
That he's gonna pay for this.
If I gotta put up with all this grossness, I'm gonna pick up his head and put it in a paper bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't have stayed in a paper bag.
Most of the other guests that were staying in the same hostel rooming house thing were all employed at British Aerospace, which is actually where Sharif worked prior to working at Marconi.
And
he had worked
they were doing
guided weapons technology.
Yeah, I was gonna say they were doing similar stuff to what he was doing for Marconi.
Yeah, and it sounds like he had been doing that prior, and then Marconi was like, hey, you want to work over here? And he was like, yeah, totally, no problem. While that in and of itself isn't really suspicious, it could have just been like a reunion or something like that. It is. I guess it seems a little weird because